So the idea that an active agent, the superhuman will of a god, explained action at a distance, was consistent with Newton's Arianism, in which Christ was God's first creation with a purely spiritual body. At a point in history, he became incarnate as flesh in the form of a man to redeem humanity. Christ's death on the cross, his resurrection, actually returned Christ to his original spiritual form, and therefore Christ always was a kind of animating spirit of the world, or logos, present everywhere, but occulted, mediating between God and his creation, enacting his Father's will. Newton speculated that it was the invisible hand of Christ who enforced the law of gravity, who literally moved things around. Now, this spookiness of Newton's theory of gravity was noted by Leibniz, who wrote at the beginning, quote, "The rebirth in England of a theology that is more than papist and a philosophy entirely scholastic, since Mr. Newton and his partisans have revived the occult qualities of the school with the idea of attraction," end quote. I'm sure that wasn't really Leibniz's voice, but there you go. So, for Newton, the movement of celestial bodies is therefore not merely mechanical, but it's also spiritual. Newton's Christ was a cosmic Christ, like a universal animism, which he believed was present not just in the heavens, but also in mundane matter upon earth. And around 1667, Newton therefore turned his attention to alchemy, which would keep him obsessively occupied for over 25 years. So let's just turn to Newton's alchemy for a moment. So the Emerald Tablet is a short fragment dating from between 200 and 300 AD, supposedly written by the mythical figure Hermes Trismegistus, which means Hermes the thrice great. And Hermes is not a person, but a Greco-Egyptian god, and therefore the Emerald Tablet, supposedly, like the Bible, is of divine origin. Now, Newton translated the Emerald Tablet and wrote a commentary on it. And the tablet contains this famous line, which you may have heard of, the beginning quote, "That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below," end quote. And that line continues, quote, "To do the miracles of one only thing, and as all things have been and arose from one by the mediation of one, so all things have their birth from this one thing by adaptation," end quote. That is actually Newton's translation. So Hermes the god seems to be telling us mere mortals that all the miracles of nature are the progeny of an original mercurial one, and therefore everything inherits the one's fundamental and universal properties, and in consequence nature is self-similar at all scales. Now, the Hermetic literature is full of occult affinities between things that we would now consider disconnected. On the other hand, we now take the unity of the laws of nature for granted, and we can view Newton's laws of motion, which unify Kepler's celestial mechanics with Galileo's terrestrial mechanics, as a vindication of this Hermetic proposition that the microcosm and the macrocosm are fundamentally similar. An alchemist, due to the influence of Hermetic metaphysics, dreamt big. Many believe that all substances were formed from a primordial, singular, original substance. And if all emanates from an original one, then starting with mundane materials in the laboratory, we might be able to reverse that process of emanation and gain access to philosopher's mercury, which is a godlike substance with the magical power of pure potentiality. So alchemists dreamt of discovering an elixir of everlasting life, the universal cure for all illnesses, and worldly riches by transmuting lead into gold. Newton adopted the alchemical pseudonym One Holy God, and he spent 25 years in furtive chemical research, holed up in a wooden shed adjoining his room in Cambridge. slaving in semi-darkness over a hot furnace, surrounded by shelves laden with alchemical texts, glass jars, crucibles, retorts. Newton wasn't really interested in worldly riches. He wanted to understand how the world worked, and he had an open mind, always ready to alter his beliefs in light of new evidence. But given his faith, the possibility of distilling a godlike substance from the mundane forms of everyday life must have been a siren call. Newton wanted, as he described it, to get at, quote, the fire at the heart of the world, end quote. So once again, Newton's Arianism enlivened his scientific investigations with metaphysical speculation. Some alchemists have proposed that the philosopher's Mercury was in fact the manifestation of the god Hermes himself. But for Newton, this was a pagan corruption of the real truth. He wondered whether it was possible that Christ, as the Son of God and mediator of God's will in the world, not only organized the macrocosm through the law of gravity, but also the microcosm as the hidden mercurial spirit in the heart of matter. As Newton called it, the condensed spirit of the world, the philosophical Mercury, could be the cosmic Christ.